Okay, let's build a small little web application that interacts with a third-party API such as this one. This is omdb API. It's a public API that allows you to query information about movies. It allows you to do query by title, by genre, by whether it's a TV show or a movie, and it returns a list of movies that or TV shows that match a particular criteria, and a very summarized list that might give you just a title, but it also provides a unique identifier that can be used for further query if you want the details about any particular movie, it's very well documented, and you can become a patron, which I have. And this is the URL syntax. You prepend, you give it the same domain name that we're at right now, but you can append an API key that the author will email you. I will send you an API key and a sample of what the query might look like, and then you can append additional query parameters that allow you to query about using a title. You can provide the ID of the movie that you're looking for. If you want a short or full plot, there's all sorts of things that you can provide, whether you want it in XML format or JSON format. And down below it gives you examples on what the queries might look like. Right? If you put here a title or year and you press on search, it gives you what the query might look like, right, and what the response would look like, right? And you can copy the URL, and in a new page you can oh, it's okay. Wants the key. I don't have the key here. If you had the key, you would return the data. I think I have the key right here in one of the emails they sent me a while back, and it looks like this, right? So if you do provide the key. Here, this is my key. Don't use my key. And if you provide the ID of that particular movie, you can query about that particular movie. Notice it's a JSON object with name-value pairs in there. Or if you want to have a ask by title, you can provide the or search string. You can say Batman with the same API key. It gives you an array of result sets. It gives you 10 results in an array, which you can close here. Plus, it tells you how many total movies match that particular query. It's useful, like for pagination, where you can ask for 10 movies at a time on your first page, second page. By default, it gives you the first page. So anyway, so this is the API. We'll play around with this, and we'd like to be able to store some information in a database, right? We like to be able to say, "Ooh, I like this movie," and so I would need to be able to make a relationship between a person, a movie, right, and the one-to-many or many-to-many relationship of like. All right, so let's take a look at that. How would we do that? So to do that, we're going to use. There are many frameworks that we can use. We took a look at briefly at the jQuery framework last week or the week before, but certainly there's many front-end frameworks that you can work with. There's React, there's Angular, there's different versions of each one of them, I don't know. We could stay with jQuery. I think that's way too low level. I think I'll choose to play around with Angular, the new version of Angular. It's fairly easy to pick up. And I'll give you enough pointers that you can reuse and build your own things. Okay? All right. All right. So first of all, we'll need to create a project to work with. And let's see. Let's create a new tab here where we can do some work. And we'll make maybe a directory where we can do our work in there. So let's go into CS5200, and in here. We'll need to create a new project, a new web development project. So to do that, you'll first have to install Node.js. Right, so if you go to nodejs.org, you can download the latest and greatest of Node. And once you install it for your particular infrastructure, whether it's PC or Windows, there will be two executables there that are of interest. Okay? One of them will be npm, and the other one will be Node itself. Node is what Node is an interpreter that allows you to run JavaScript applications on your desktop. Right? One might say, well, why would I want to do that? I mean, JavaScript typically is client-side. Well, it allows you to use the same language, but access of infrastructure that you would normally not have access to. Right? If you're running on the browser, you can only manipulate the DOM. You can manipulate, interact with with browsers, but you can't access databases. You can't access the file system. You can't do a lot of things. But Node.js, since it's running on the desktop, it allows you to do all that, access a database, have unfettered access to the network. So it allows you to execute JavaScript on the desktop. So anyway, you would install that, so yeah, that's Node. That's the Node executable. Allows you to execute JavaScript. The other executable of interest is npm. Npm is like the name suggests, it's a Node package manager. It allows you to install all sorts of libraries that can be executed using Node. One of the libraries that we are of interest is the Angular library that we can install. We can install it by using npm. Once you've installed Node, you will have access to this npm command, Node Package Manager. Make sense? Right, the Node Package Manager will allow you to install other things, right, that run using the Node framework. So one of the things that we would install using, because we want to use Angular as a front end, is the Angular command line interface. Right? So to install the command line interface, the Angular command line, you would say npm install global, right? So you can run the command line interface from anywhere, and then say Angular / command line interface. I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it. And what allows you, once you've installed that, it installs this new command called ng for Angular. It allows you to create a new project, and that's what we're going to do. Right? So we're going to say npm, and we're going to create a new project. I'm sorry, not npm, ng, sorry. So all that preface is to say that I can say ng new, and then the new project. So that ng has been installed using npm, and npm has been installed with Node. All right, so you install Node, you install ng, and now you can create a project. Make sense? All right. All right, so we'll create CS 5200, and this will be Angular. But let me say that this is summer 2018, and this is an Angular project. This will take a bit. Is it? I think it might not like dashes. All right, so that's going to take a little bit. Meanwhile, we can open this with your favorite editor. I happen to prefer IntelliJ or WebStorm. Let's give it a minute. It's setting up an environment where we can develop and compile. So meanwhile, let's move over to WebStorm. So let's bring up WebStorm. Okay, it's done. While WebStorm is opening, one of the things that I would like to show you is it creates this directory with the project name that you gave it. If you go in there, you can run the project that was just created for you by typing npm start. npm, again, Node Package Manager, starts it up, and it starts up a local Node.js server, I might already have something running. I already had something running at that port. Try it again. All right, so it's up and running, and it's listening at 4200. So this new project, this is a boilerplate project, right? That doesn't really do anything. It just says hello. It's a hello world project. It compiles, it deploys, and now we can look at it locally and see what it looks like. We can point to 4200, to localhost 4200. And this is the default application. This is the default Angular application, just a hello world. Right? We're going to throw this away. We don't need it. And we'll start from scratch. Everybody okay? All right. Okay. Let's get started. So there's our terminal window that's the server is running. I'm going to start a new terminal window where I can actually be in that directory. Okay. Let's take a brief look at the content. Let's open it up with our favorite command line interface, or I'm sorry, our favorite IDE. Let me close some of these projects. Close that and close this one too. And instead, I'm going to open this new project that we just created. It's under CS5200. There it is. And there's our new project. I'll just open it up. Okay, all our source code is under SRC, as you would expect, and under app. And the entry point to the application is this modules. This modules is the one who declares the root package of the project, and what it does is that it loads the root component of the application. In this case, the root component is called app component. Right, that's the root level component that loads everything else, right? And it has a default template, an HTML page that right now the only thing that it does is that this is the content. This is the actual content we're looking at right now, right? It's just loading this hello, this content over here, right? This hello, welcome to app. If we put here any content. It recompiles and redeploys, and you see the output immediately. Right? So anything we would like to replace, we could replace into that root component. Right? So we could do all our development right here, okay, and never leave this HTML page. Right? That'd be totally fine. Typically, in the HTML, you put all the front-end stuff, right? All the rendering of the user interface would go here. And typically, all the logic would go in a sister JavaScript file, although this is not JavaScript. Notice that instead of JS, it's TS. Okay? Instead of JS, it's TS. It's TypeScript. It's a superset of JavaScript, right? So JavaScript is TypeScript, but TypeScript adds a whole bunch of other things, right? Such as imports, support for classes, support for modules, support for annotations, has a lot, inheritance, public and private. So a lot of support of things that were not there before ES6, right? A lot of these things already have made it into the language. But TS was an attempt at adding a lot of modern things that were missing in the JavaScript language. All right, so let's see. We're not going to touch this. The only thing that we're going to touch is that we're going to create components. Every time we want a new page, a new user interface piece, we would create a brand new component. For instance, one of the things that we like to do with our movies is maybe search for a movie, right? And maybe have a user interface that I type the name or the title of the movie, or something like this. I type the name of the movie, it goes and fetches this data, and it displays it locally on my machine. Yes? Which is one of the requirements in your project. Right? So let's see how we could do that. So let's see. Let's create a new component, a new page that will allow us to search for movies. Okay? So let's call it maybe movie search. Okay? All right. So let's create a new component, a brand new component. Again, we're going to use the ng command. we're going to generate a brand new component, and we'll call it movie and then search. Okay? So that's going to generate four artifacts, right? And from the extension, you pretty much know what they are, right? This will be the JavaScript content of the logic, what to do with data, right? How to generate data, how to fetch data, how to manipulate data. And the HTML will be how we're going to render that data. And the CSS is how are we going to style it, right? The colors and fonts and what this looks like. Plus, we also have a test file that we can test our component individually. All our unit tests would go there. Right, so all components are made up of these four artifacts. Make sense? Angular is pretty adamant at following the model view controller design pattern in breaking up, making a very, very clear distinction on the roles and the responsibilities of each one of these, right? So if you're going to do any logic that involves laying out or displaying or looking pretty, you know exactly where you should be in HTML or CSS. But if there's any data manipulation or any logic, then it would be in the TS. And they don't mix, right? They talk to one another, they send messages to one another, but they never intermix. You would never see HTML code generated in the TS, right? Or vice versa. You would never see logic, JavaScript embedded in the HTML, right? So it's a very clear-cut distinction of the roles and responsibilities of each one of these. All right, so let's. We have our very first component. If we open it up, if we go into, it creates a directory for brand new components. And in our HTML, it just has this dummy content that says movie search works. Right, that's all it is. Our component is also pretty empty. It just has a constructor and an initializer, but other than that, there's nothing else. It is binding. It's binding and saying that hey, this component, this logic, is tied to this template, this HTML template. So these two know about each other. It's also tied to the styling in CSS. It's also declaring on how it can be rendered in an HTML page. How do you render this HTML? How do you tie these two things together? And the way you tie it is that you use this selector, this HTML selector. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Right? What we're going to do is that in our root component, we're going to blow away the root content. Okay? And now if this renders, you'll notice that now it's empty. There's nothing there. Right? And actually, whatever we put in here, if we say H1 welcome to CS 5200, that's what it would render, right? It's blank. So what we're going to do here is that we can load that new component we just created. To refer to it, we can use this HTML, right? This element, right? It allows you to embed components using these new HTML elements that didn't exist before. So if we copy that and we go here, we can actually use that component. And sorry. And notice it says movie search works, right? So notice that wherever you want the component or the content of that component to render, you can use that brand new element. Yes, all right. And that component has two parts of it, right? That component has two components. It has the logic part here, and it has the contents part here, right? And they don't mix. All right, everybody still with me? Everybody okay? All right. Okay, so how do these two work? How do these two talk to one another? This HTML and this component, how do they talk to one another? Very easy. The component can declare new variables and say hello. Hello from movie search component. Right? And any variable that is declared on the component is immediately available on the HTML side, okay? By name. If you called it hello, it will be available on the HTML also by hello, right? So if I go to the HTML part, and instead of having this paragraph here, I say hello, it renders hello from movie. So you might say, well, what's this funny curly brackets? Why do curly brackets? Well, if I just had hello, it would just render the text hello, right? Because it would say, well, it's just text. Yes? That was from the root component. The root component here. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so that's pretty static, right? There would be no way to dynamically remove that. It's always there. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, hello here is being interpreted as a literal string, right? It doesn't evaluate to anything. It evaluates to just a literal string. So to distinguish between what's literal strings and a variable, we need some escape sequence. The default escape sequence in Angular is to use the double curly brackets, right? Although you can override it and you can define your own escape sequence, right? But that's the most common escape sequence. And so this says this hello should not be interpreted as a literal string hello, but it's a variable that refers to something, right? And who declares that hello? My friend, the component. The component that goes along with this HTML. Yes? This is how they know about each other. Everybody okay? All right. All right. Awesome. So this is how we talk to one another, right? I can send data to the HTML side, and we'll see in a minute how the HTML can send data back to the component. They can talk to one another, sending data back and forth. It doesn't have to be this simple hello. It could be an actual movies, right? Maybe it could be an array instead of being just a little string. It could be a whole complex object, right? An array of objects or an object of arrays, right? It could be a movies. It could have titles, Blade Runner. It could have Avatar. It could have what else? Terminator. Thank you. 2. Harry Potter. And in the HTML, I can instead, for instance, have an H2 that says movies and refer to movies, the movies array that I have over there, and maybe just display the length. Okay. And it renders as 4 because there are 4 movies in that array. Okay? Or I can iterate over them. I could iterate over them to display them. So for instance, here I can have a UL, and then in there I can have an LI, and I like to display the title of each one of those movies. Ideally, there would be some object called movies, and then I could render the titles. So typically, what I like to be able to do is perhaps copy this LI over and over and over for every one movie that is in that list of array, right? So what we could do is use an iterator such as the ng4. ng4, as you might think, right? Say it's a for loop, allows you to iterate over a collection of things. And allows you to declare a local variable such as movie, and then declare what. This is an iteration over what collection, right? So it's a movie of movies, right? So where movies is that original array. And in here, we can say movie. It renders 4 times, right? It renders 4 times because there's 4 movies in there, right? But right now, it's the movie is really what a literal here, right? We really want an object So we could say that this is actually I want the variable movie, not the literal movie, and so that renders as an object. So, okay, this is an object. I don't know how to render this object, right? So I render as this. This is the default rendering of JavaScript objects. Or I could decide that it's a particular field that I want to render, right? And then it would render those four titles. So really the magic would be of, instead of having this hard-coded list of movies, is I like to actually get it from somewhere, right? From some API, like the API we were just looking at, right? Would be like the query we have here. Right, this would be, let's see, where was I? It was, I think we had, the query might be something like search string, and we provide Batman, and then this is the array. This array here, this array of Batman movies is what I would like to render dynamically, right? How do I fetch that, right? And it's actually fairly simple to fetch these. One of the easy ways of fetching it is to use a command called fetch, a JavaScript fetch, and we could do this in the init, right? In the component initializer, where we can use fetch. Fetch is a JavaScript command that if you give it a URL, it'll go and fetch the data for you, right? So let's do that. We can copy that URL. Right, and provide it here as an argument, as a string, and the default behavior of fetch is that it will generate a get request. Right, that's the default, and then it allows you to then register a callback. Right, these requests are all typically asynchronous calls. The JavaScript that is running on the browser, it's a single thread. So typically we don't want to risk blocking that one thread. So typically all these network accesses are delegated to the browser itself. The browser knows how to have a whole bunch of threads running, right? But JavaScript is only one thread. So fetch delegates the work to the browser using the AJAX, right? And the browser then notifies back us with a response. Here it is. Here's the response from the server. So anyway, so we get back is the response. Here's the response, and here we're using the new syntax in EJS6, the arrow function, where we're getting a hold of the response, and we're going to for now let's do a console log response. Okay. If we do that and we go back to our components and we look at we inspect and we look at our network and we reload, you'll notice that the query went out. Here it is. See that? That's the query that went out. See that? The query went out. There it is. That's our URL. We did it programmatically, right, as opposed to us typing it at the input field, and it came back with the actual object in there. See that? There's our object, and we have the search field, and in there we have titles and year and IMDb and all information we might need. Okay, so the only thing we might need to do is perhaps we can instead of displaying it to the console, we can assign the search array to our movies. Right? We can say this dot movies is equal to the response dot search. Right? I think it was capital, right? Response dot search. Why are you red? Unresolved. Okay, it doesn't know that response actually has that. Search design response. We might need to parse it. Wait a minute. We might need to response.json. we might need to convert it into a JSON object first, and then maybe we have movies, the response, and then here we have the search maybe. We can say this dot movies is equal to response dot search. Maybe? All right, so it looks like it did find 10 movies, those 10 movies that came back. But I think it was expecting lowercase title when it was rendering. Instead, what it's coming back is capital T title. Capital T title. That's fine. We can go real quick on the RHTML and replace lower T title with uppercase title. And there we have our 10 movies that came from OMDB. Make sense? All right. So fetching data, real data from a remote API is fairly simple. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of best practices. Typically, instead of doing data access here, we would instead generate a separate class where we would have all data access in one single modular, reusable. Actually, let's do that. Let's do that. It's a sore thumb here. So typically, all data access, just like we implemented DAOs, right? That's a best practice that you encapsulate all data access into one single class. Yes, and we also implemented a service layer, a RESTful service layer that encapsulated all RESTful network access through one little service, right? So same thing here. Instead of using it here, you would instead declare it in a separate class, perhaps in a different in a directory called services. We can implement several services in here, and we can create the movie service, right, on the client side, and yes, we want that. And here we can declare a brand new class and call it the movie service client. And in here we can copy this fetch, right, and provide inside of an API that we can reuse, right. So here we might have what a function called find Batman's, right? Batman movies, and in here we have the fetch, and we would perhaps do the query, and just return this, return whatever this returns, right? We return that. We return that fetch. We return that, and now our component can make use of that service. Instead of using it like this, we can make use of that brand new service we created. What was it called? The movie service. It will be movie service. What do we get our movie service? Well, Angular makes use of a technique that we've come to use quite often in Java, which is injection, right? Whenever you pass in data into a constructor, you can have the infrastructure instantiate something and then pass it to you as an argument. So the movie service we can declare here and say that it's of type movie service client. And here we can make use of it. We can say this.movie service. Movie service dot find Batman movies, and this returns a then. Okay? And let's see. It didn't seem to work. Why are you not working? Console? Oh, right. We need to declare. Because for this injection to work, we need to do one more little magical thing. we need to declare it as a data provider, that it can be used and injected. So we need to declare it. So let's declare it there. And now we're back where we were, right? But at least we're using a good practice, right? We're encapsulating all data access into one single place. Everyone okay? All right, let's move on to the next thing.